Hey fellow nerds, today we are going to learn continuous time Fourier series. Here we'll be discussing exponential signal set, exponential Fourier series, alternative forms of Fourier series representation of continuous time periodic signals, convergence of Fourier series, and Gibbs phenomenon. In the last video, we learned that we can represent a signal as a Fourier series with respect to an orthogonal set of infinite component signals. The first thing we are going to do today is to define such an orthogonal set that contains infinite signals in it. I am talking about an exponential signal set. The set of exponentials of the form e raised to j k omega naught t, where k can take any integer from minus infinity to infinity, is orthogonal over any interval duration of t naught. Obviously, we are going to prove it. For that, we will first take two signals from this set. Let the first one be e raised to j n omega naught t, and let the second one be e raised to j m omega naught t. To prove that these two are mutually orthogonal, what we have to do is prove that their inner product is equal to 0. Obviously, these two are complex, so we'll have to define our inner product like this: integral from 0 to t naught e raised to j, let's take m omega naught t first, multiplied by conjugate of the second one, e raised to j n omega naught t conjugate dt. All we have to prove here is that this integral is going to be equal to 0. Now this will be integral 0 to t naught e raised to j m omega naught t. We need the conjugate of e raised to j n omega naught t. When you take conjugate of a complex number, j becomes minus j. So this is e raised to minus j n omega naught t dt. Combining both of them, we can write integral from 0 to t naught e raised to j multiplied by m minus n omega naught t dt. Now there can be two cases here. The first one is if m is equal to n. That means we have taken the same signal e raised to j n omega naught t and e raised to j n omega naught t itself. In that case, this becomes integral from 0 to t naught. It is e raised to j multiplied by 0. E raised to 0 is 1. So 1 dt. Integral dt is t from 0 to t naught. So we get it is just t naught. Let us take the second case now. If m is not equal to n, then we will have to properly integrate the exponential function. We know integration of e raised to kt is 1 by k e raised to kt. So here it becomes 1 by coefficient of t here is j into m minus n omega naught multiplied by e raised to j into m minus n omega naught t and giving the limits from 0 to t naught. Now this becomes 1 by j into m minus n omega naught. If you give the upper limit, this becomes e raised to j into m minus n omega naught t naught minus, if you give the lower limit, it is just e raised to 0, which is 1. Now omega naught is the angular frequency. We know omega naught is equal to 2 pi divided by the time period t naught. Using that, we can write this as 1 by j into m minus n omega naught e raised to j m minus n omega naught is 2 pi by t naught multiplied by t naught minus 1. We can cancel t naught and t naught. Now what we have here is e raised to j something multiplied by 2 pi. Let us for now call this m minus n k. So what we have there is e raised to j k 2 pi. According to Euler's formula, this will be written as cos k 2 pi or 2 pi k plus j sine 2 pi k. But cos 2 pi k, cos of a multiple of 2 pi is 1 plus j sine of a multiple of 2 pi is 0. So this is equal to 1. This term we have over here is 1. Therefore, this becomes 1 by j into m minus n omega naught multiplied by 1 minus 1. So this is equal to 0. The inner product is 0 if m is not equal to n. The inner product is not 0 if m is equal to n. This is the same in the case of two-dimensional or three-dimensional vectors also. Right? If you take I dot I, you don't get 0. This is actually 1. But if you take I dot k, you get 0. If you take I dot j, you get 0. So if you're taking two different vectors, you will get the dot product is 0. If you get the same vector, then you're not getting 0. Same thing here, if you're taking two different components in the orthogonal set, their inner product is going to be 0. If you take the same ones, then you won't be getting 0. So this is proof that a set of exponentials of the form e raised to j k omega naught t, where k can take any integer value from minus infinity to infinity, is orthogonal over any interval of duration t naught. So technically, here we have infinite components in this orthogonal set. And that is exactly what we were looking for to represent a function using Fourier series. When we use the orthogonal set of complex exponential signals to represent a signal using Fourier series, then it is called exponential Fourier series. The set of orthogonal signals we are using here is e raised to j k omega naught t. It is a set of harmonically related complex exponentials. Here k can take any integer value from minus infinity to infinity, and omega is related to the time period as omega is 2 pi by t. For k equal to 0, you will get e raised to j 0, that is 1. For k equal to 1, you will get e raised to j omega naught t. For k equals minus 1, you will get e raised to minus j omega naught t. For k equal to 2, you will get e raised to j 2 omega naught t. It goes on like that. That is, each of these signals has a fundamental frequency that is a multiple of omega naught. For k equal to 0, you get 0 times omega naught. For k equal to 1, you get 1 times omega naught. For k equal to 20, you get 20 times omega naught. That is why we say they are harmonically related. So in general, for the kth signal, the fundamental frequency is k multiplied by omega. What about time period? We know omega is 2 pi by t. So t naught is going to be 2 pi divided by omega naught. For the kth signal, omega will be k omega naught. So for the kth signal, time period will be 2 pi by omega. That is 2 pi by k omega naught. That is 1 by k times 2 pi by omega naught, or 1 by k times t naught. So each signal will have a time period of a fraction of t. Now let's do a recap on what we learned in the previous video and compare what we have now with it so that we can find an expression to represent a signal using exponential Fourier series. In the previous video, we took an orthogonal set and we called it set of all x n of t. It included signals like x1 of t, x2 of t, up to infinite terms. Over here also, we have our own orthogonal set. This time, it is the set of all e raised to j k omega naught t. And this include infinite terms as well, but it starts from minus infinity to infinity. So we have so many terms over here. Then there is e raised to minus j omega naught t. Then there is e raised to j 0 omega naught t. then there is e raised to j 1 omega naught t. The next one will be e raised to j 2 omega naught t, etc. up to infinite terms. In the previous video, to write our signal as a linear combination of all these signals in the orthogonal set, we defined their coefficients. Coefficient of the nth component signal was called Cn. So we had coefficients like C1, C2, C3, etc. up to infinity. C1 corresponded to x1 of t, C2 corresponded to x2 of t, like that. Over here also we will define coefficients corresponding to each of our component signals. Instead of calling them Cn, let's call them AK. A for the coefficient, K corresponds to which signal you're talking about, the K over here. Our coefficients will have to start from minus infinity to infinity. So we have a lot over here, then corresponding to e raised to minus j omega naught t, you will have a minus 1. Corresponding to e raised to j 0 omega naught t, you will have a 0. Corresponding to e raised to j 1 omega naught t, you will have a1. For the next one, you will have a2. It goes on like that, and you have infinite coefficients. Finally, in the previous video, we wrote an expression. Finally, in the last video, we represented a function f of t as a Fourier series like this. F of t has c1 amount of x1 of t and c2 amount of x2 of t, c3 amount of x3 of t, and it goes on like that up to infinite terms. As a summation, we wrote it like this: summation from n equals 1 to infinity, nth coefficient multiplied by nth component signal xn of t. Over here, let us try to represent a signal x of t in exponential Fourier series. It will start from minus infinity, so we have many terms here, and then a minus 1 multiplied by e raised to minus j omega naught t plus a0 multiplied by e raised to j 0 omega naught t plus a1 multiplied by e raised to j omega naught t plus again infinite terms. As a summation, how do we write it? X of t is equal to summation from k, here can take values from minus infinity to infinity. ak e raised to j k omega naught t. So this is how we represent x of t as an exponential Fourier series. Let's put that in a box. Let us now conclude this. A function x of t can be defined as an exponential Fourier series like this. X of t is equal to summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak e raised to j k omega naught t. But one thing we have learned in the first video is that complex exponential signal is periodic. And we have written x of t as a linear combination of periodic signals, which means x of t should also be a periodic signal. Using this idea, let us update our definition for Fourier series. Representation of a periodic signal in this form is called Fourier series. So Fourier series is used to represent a periodic signal. So Fourier series is used to represent a periodic signal as a linear combination of harmonically related complex exponentials. Let us now make some observations from this equation. First of all, when k equal to 0, the term you get will be a0 multiplied by e raised to j 0 omega naught t, that is a0 e raised to 0. E raised to 0 is 1, so this is just a0. The component for k equal to 0 is a constant, and that constant is equal to a0. Now, the components that will be corresponding to k equals plus 1 and minus 1, the two components on the right and left side of k equal to 0, they are called fundamental components. Similarly, Components corresponding to k equals plus or minus 2 are called first harmonic components. So in general, we can say that the nth harmonic components will be corresponding to k equals plus or minus n plus 1. Let's now solve a problem. Here it is given that signal x of t is periodic with omega naught, which is equal to 2 pi. X of t is summation from k equals minus 3 to plus 3 ak e raised to j k 2 pi t. We have 2 pi here because obviously omega naught is 2 pi. It is given that a0 is 1, a1 and a minus 1 are equal and they are equal to 1 by 4. a2 and a minus 2 are equal, they are equal to 1 by 2. a3 and a minus 3, they are equal to 1 by 3. We have to find out what is x of t. So first of all, let us write down what is x of t. For k equal to 0, we get a0 multiplied by e raised to 0, which is 1, plus a1 e raised to j, k is 1, so 2 pi t, plus a minus 1 e raised to minus j 2 pi t, plus a2 e raised to j, 2 times 2 pi t, so j 4 pi t, plus a minus 2 e raised to minus j 4 pi t, plus for k equal to 3, a 3 e raised to j 6 pi t, plus a minus 3 e raised to minus j 6 pi t. It is given in the question a0 is 1, a1 and a minus 1 are equal, so we can group these two terms. a2 and a minus 2 are equal, we can group these two terms. a3 and a minus 3 are equal, we will group these two. So substituting all of them and grouping the like terms, we get x of t is equal to a0 is 1 plus a1 and a minus 1 are 1 by 4 multiplied by e raised to j 2 pi t plus e raised to minus j 2 pi t, plus a2 and a minus 2 are 1 by 2 multiplied by, there is e raised to j 4 pi t plus e raised to minus j 4 pi t, plus a3 and a minus 3 are 1 by 3 multiplied by e raised to j 6 pi t plus e raised to minus j 6 pi t. But we can use Euler's formula to write e raised to j omega t plus e raised to minus j omega t. According to Euler's formula, e raised to j omega t is cos omega t plus j sine omega t, plus e raised to minus j omega t will be cos of minus omega t, but cos minus theta is cos theta, so this is just cos omega t minus j sine omega t. So these two gets cancelled and all we get is 2 cos omega t. This is equal to 2 cos omega t. In that case, e raised to j 2 pi t plus e raised to minus j 2 pi t, what will it give us? 2 cos 2 pi t. E raised to j 4 pi t, e raised to minus j 4 pi t, that will become 2 cos 4 pi t. E raised to j 6 pi t and e raised to minus j 6 pi t will obviously become 2 cos 6 pi t. Using this idea, we can write x of t is equal to, first term is just 1 plus 1 by 4 multiplied by 2 cos 2 pi t. That is cos 2 pi t divided by 2 plus 1 by 2 multiplied by 2 cos 4 pi t. 2 and 2 gets cancelled. It is cos 4 pi t plus 1 by 3 multiplied by 2 cos 6 pi t. That is 2 by 3 cos 6 pi t. And this is our signal x of t. Before we move on to the next part, we have to learn a little bit of mathematics. What we are going to learn is how to represent complex functions in different forms. We have four basic forms: rectangular form, polar form, exponential form, and trigonometric form. The most common one is the rectangular form. You can write a complex function like this: z is equal to a plus j b. Here a will be the real part and b will be the imaginary part. We can write the same function in polar form like this: z is equal to r angle theta. Here r is the magnitude of the function, so r is equal to root of a square plus b square. And theta is defined as tan inverse of b divided by a. We can write the same function in exponential form like this: z is equal to r e raised to j theta. This is actually just a special case of the polar form. Now we can write the same function in trigonometric form like this: z is equal to r multiplied by cos theta plus j sin theta. Here r is again the magnitude of the function, which is root of a square plus b square. Cos theta will be equal to a divided by root of a square plus b square, and sin theta is equal to b divided by root of a square plus b square. If you substitute these in this equation, you can see the equation converges to this one, just a plus jb. Now let us write down some alternative forms of Fourier series. We already have x of t is written as summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity a k e raised to j k omega naught t. I am going to write the same thing in a different way. X of t is equal to a0 plus summation from k equals 1 to infinity a k e raised to j k omega naught t plus a minus k e raised to minus jk omega naught t. Let's see how they are equal. When k equal to 0, I just get a0, it is already here. Then I have written summation from k equal 1 to infinity of ak e raised to jk omega naught t. So that takes all the values of k from 1 to infinity. Now all that is left is for k from minus 1 to minus infinity. For that I have this summation from k equals 1 to infinity a minus k e raised to minus jk omega naught t. So that accounts for the negative side also. So this whole things is nothing but summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak e raised to jk omega naught t. So technically you're taking all integer values of k from minus infinity to infinity. A few minutes ago we learned that a conjugate of k is equal to a minus k. So I can write a conjugate of k in place of a minus k over here. Our equation becomes x of t is equal to a naught plus summation from k equals 1 to infinity ak e raised to j k omega naught t plus a conjugate of k e raised to minus j k omega naught t. Let us take a closer look at these two. Here we have ak, here we have a conjugate of k. Here we have plus j, here we have minus j. So that means these two are actually complex conjugates of each other. Now, what happens when you add the conjugate of a function to itself? Let's see, if you have a plus jb and its conjugate a minus jb and you add them together, the imaginary part will get cancelled and all you get will be 2 times the real part. That is exactly what is going to happen here. We are adding ak e raised to j omega naught t with its conjugate. So the resultant is going to be 2 times the real part of ak e raised to jk omega naught t. So our function becomes x of t is equal to a0 plus summation from k equals 1 to infinity 2 times real part of ak e raised to j k omega naught t. To get the first alternative form of exponential Fourier series, let us write ak in polar form. That is, ak is equal to its magnitude multiplied by e raised to j, the angle theta k. Then x of t becomes a0 plus 2 here is a constant, we can take it out of the summation. So 2 times summation from k equals 1 to infinity, real part of ak here will be written in this form. So capital AK e raised to j theta k multiplied by e raised to j k omega naught t. We can add the exponents. So this becomes a0 plus 2 summation from k equals 1 to infinity, real part of ak e raised to j theta k plus k omega naught t. Again, what is e raised to j omega t? According to Euler's formula, it is cos omega t plus j sine omega t. Then what is real part of e raised to j omega t? It is simply cos omega t. Here what we want is a real part of ak multiplied by e raised to j theta k plus k omega naught t. So that is going to be ak multiplied by cos of that angle. This becomes a0 plus 2 summation from k equals 1 to infinity ak cos theta k plus k omega naught t. Now this is an alternate form of representing x of t as a Fourier series. Let's move on to the next one. Here we have to write ak in the rectangular form, that is of the form a plus jb. So let us write down ak is equal to some bk plus j ck. Here bk and ck will be real. Just like how when we write 1 plus 2j, 1 and 2 are real. Now using this, our equation becomes x of t is equal to a0 plus, let's take 2 out of the summation, summation from k equals 1 to infinity, real part of ak will now be written as bk plus jck. So bk plus jck multiplied by, we have e raised to j k omega naught t. I am going to use Euler's formula and write it as cos k omega naught t plus j sin k omega naught t. So we have cos k omega naught t plus j sin k omega naught t. So this becomes a0 plus 2 times summation from k equal to 1 to infinity. The important part is we only need the real part of this product. So let us check out what all will be the real part of it. If we multiply bk with cos k omega naught t, it will be real. So let's write down bk cos omega naught t. If bk is multiplied with j sin k omega naught t, there is j, so it is going to be imaginary. We don't have to take it. Then jck multiplied with cos k omega naught t, again there is a j, so it is imaginary. Jck multiplied with j sin k omega naught t, j and j negative 1, so this will be real. Minus ck sin k omega naught t. Now this is another way of representing the signal x of t as a Fourier series. But throughout this course, we'll only be using the original exponential Fourier series representation of periodic signals. So let us leave all of these aside and move on. We learned the Fourier series representation of continuous time periodic signal. We can write x of t as summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak e raised to j k omega naught t. Here we know what e raised to j k omega naught t is. This is the set of orthogonal signals that we are going to use to represent our periodic signal x of t as a Fourier series. That is, we have e raised to j 0 omega naught t, we have e raised to j 1 omega naught t, we have e raised to j 2 omega naught t, etc. up to infinity. And on the other side, we have e raised to minus j omega naught t, e raised to minus j 2 omega naught t, and up to minus infinity. Ak is the coefficient of each of these. So A0 tells you how much of e raised to 0 is there in x of t. A1 tells you how much of e raised to j omega naught t is there in x of t. A2 tells you how much of e raised to j 2 omega naught t is there in x of t. So basically the coefficients tell you how much of each of these harmonics are there in your periodic signal. So what we need over here right now is to design a procedure to find out ak for each of the e raised to jk omega naught t's. To do so, the first thing we have to do is multiply both sides of the equation with e raised to minus jn omega naught t. If we do that, we get something like this. The left hand side becomes x of t multiplied by e raised to minus jn omega naught t, and on the right hand side we have summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak e raised to jk omega naught t multiplied by e raised to minus jn omega naught t. Here we have two exponential functions, so we can take them together by adding their exponents. So together they become e raised to j k minus n omega naught t. The next step we have to do here is to integrate both sides of this equation from 0 to t, where t is 2 pi by omega. If we do that, we'll get something like this. I have integrated both sides of the equation from 0 to t. The next thing we need to do is interchange the order of integration and summation. If you look at the right hand side of this equation, we can see there is integration and summation. What we need to do is interchange them. So summation should come first and then integration. Like this. Again, we can see the integration is based on the variable t. But ak has nothing to do with t, so it can come out of the integration. It still has to stay inside summation because summation is actually from k equal to minus infinity to infinity. It has something to do with k. Now over here we have k minus n. There are two cases that can happen over here. Let us take case 1 where k is not equal to n. If k is not equal to n, then we can expand this using Euler's formula. So that integration becomes integral 0 to t cos of k minus n omega naught t plus j sine of k minus n omega naught t dt. But the first term is a cos function. We are integrating it from 0 to 1 time period, it will be 0. The second term is a sine function. We are integrating it from 0 to t, 1 time period, it will be 0. So the RHS of the equation simply becomes 0, which means LHS is also 0. Let's now take the second case, case 2, where k is equal to n. If k is equal to n, then the RHS becomes summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak integral from 0 to t e raised to j k minus n. K is equal to n, so k minus n is 0. We get e raised to 0, which is just 1 dt. Integral 1 dt is t. Limit is from 0 to t, so it simply becomes the time period t. So RHS is summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak multiplied by time period t. Let's write it with the LHS. integral from 0 to t x of t e raised to minus j n omega naught t dt is equal to summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity a k multiplied by t. T is a constant, so let us take it out of the summation. T multiplied by summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity a k. So over here what we have is summation of all a k's, where k can take any values from minus infinity to infinity. But we already saw if k is not equal to n, then this is going to be equal to 0. We got this at the RHS only for the condition k is equal to n. So out of the summation, we have so many terms from minus infinity, a minus 1, a0, a1, a2 up to infinity. But the only one that will survive is a n, where k is equal to n. Because when k is not equal to n, the whole thing is becoming 0. So this summation simply becomes an. So we can write this is equal to t multiplied by an. Taking t to the other side of the equation, we can write an expression for an 1 by t integral from 0 to t x of t e raised to minus j n omega naught dt. So the nth coefficient an is given by 1 by t integral from 0 to t x of t e raised to minus j n omega naught t dt. My question is, then what will be a k? All you have to do is change n to k, that is 1 by t integral 0 to t x of t e raised to minus j k omega naught t dt. Now, using this equation, we can find the coefficient of every signal in the orthogonal set used to represent x of t as a Fourier series. Now, an important concept here is that we have written integral from 0 to t. It doesn't always have to be from 0 to 1t. The only condition is that the integration should be over one time period. So, instead of writing 0 to t, we can simply put a t over here to show that the integration have to be throughout one time period. So we have two equations. A periodic signal x of t can be represented as a Fourier series like this. Summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak e raised to j k omega naught t. In this case, coefficient corresponding to the kth component ak can be found using this equation 1 by t integral over one time period of x of t e raised to minus j k omega naught t dt. The first equation is what we call synthesis equation, and the second equation is called analysis equation. Here the set of all ak are called Fourier series coefficients of the periodic signal x of t, or we can call them spectral series coefficients of x of t. The component corresponding to k equal to 0, that is a0, is considered the dc or the constant component of x of t. We can modify this equation to get an expression for a0. a0 will be equal to 1 by t integral over one time period of x of t multiplied by e raised to 0, which is 1. So x of t dt. But this equation simply gives us the time average of the function x of t over one time period. So we can say that the component corresponding to k equal to 0, that is the dc or constant component, is actually equal to the average value of our function over one time period. Let us now solve a problem. We have to write the Fourier series representation of x of t, which is sine omega naught t. This is actually a pretty easy question and we don't really have to use any of the equations. I'll show you why. According to Euler's formula, we know e raised to j omega naught t can be written as cos omega naught t plus j sine omega naught t. Similarly, if I want e raised to minus j omega naught t, it will be cos of minus omega naught t, but cos minus theta is cos theta, so cos omega naught t, then plus j sine minus omega naught t. Sine minus theta is minus sine theta, so this becomes minus j sine omega naught t. So if you add these two, then the imaginary terms will cancel and you will get 2 cos omega naught t. So you can write cos of omega naught t is nothing but half of their sum, e raised to j omega naught t plus e raised to minus j omega naught t. Similarly, if you subtract e raised to minus j omega naught t from e raised to j omega naught t, cos omega t and cos omega t will get cancelled and j sin omega t and j sin omega t will get added up. So, if you want sine of omega naught t, it will simply be equal to 1 by 2j times their difference, e raised to j omega naught t minus e raised to minus j omega naught t. What we have in the question is a single sine omega naught t. So we can write sine omega naught t is 1 by 2j times e raised to j omega naught t minus 1 by 2j times e raised to minus j omega naught t. Here we have 1 omega, so this is corresponding to k equal to 1. So this will be our a1. Here we have minus omega naught, so this is corresponding to k equals minus 1. So what we have over here is a minus 1. Therefore, a1 is 1 by 2j and a minus 1 is minus 1 by 2j. What about the other coefficients? They are all 0 because they are not included in our original signal sine omega naught t. So we can write ak is equal to 0 for all k that is not equal to 1 or minus 1. What we have over here is the Fourier series representation of x of t, which is sine omega naught t. Let us now solve another problem. We have to write the Fourier series representation of x of t. X of t is 1 plus sine omega naught t plus 2 cos omega naught t plus cos of 2 omega naught t plus pi by 4. Let us try to solve this in a similar way. We can write x of t like this. There is 1 plus sine omega naught t can be written as 1 by 2j e raised to j omega naught t minus e raised to minus j omega naught t. Here we want 2 cos omega naught t. 2 cos omega naught t will be e raised to j omega naught t plus e raised to minus j omega naught t. We saw this in the previous example also. Here we have cos of something, cos of 2 omega naught t plus pi by 4. So that will be half of e raised to j something plus e raised to minus j something, something being 2 omega naught t plus pi by 4. Now over here we have e raised to j into 2 omega naught t plus pi by 4. Let us split it like this. E raised to j 2 omega naught t multiplied by e raised to j pi by 4. Now this is a function of t. It is one of the signals in the orthogonal set. This is not a function of t. It is e raised to j pi by 4. It is a constant. So we can write x of t like this. E raised to j into 2 omega naught t plus pi by 4 is written as e raised to j into pi by 4 into e raised to j 2 omega naught t, just like how we got over here. Since this is a constant, half into that will be the coefficient of e raised to j 2 omega naught t. Similarly, on the other side, we have e raised to minus j 2 omega naught t plus pi by 4. That can also be split. So we get the coefficient of e raised to minus j 2 omega naught t is half into e raised to minus j into pi by 4. Now over here we can do something. e raised to j omega t has coefficient 1 by 2j here. It has coefficient 1 here. If we put them together, we can see that e raised to j omega naught t has coefficient 1 plus 1 by 2j. Similarly, we have e raised to minus j omega naught t here. Its coefficient here is minus 1 by 2j. Over here, we have the same thing. Its coefficient now is plus 1. So together we can write e raised to minus j omega naught t is having a coefficient 1 minus 1 by 2j. So let us change these two terms accordingly and we get this. Now e raised to j omega naught t has 1 omega naught, so it corresponds to k equal to 1. So what we have over here is a1. E raised to minus j omega naught t has minus omega naught in it, so it corresponds to k equals minus 1. So what we have over here is a minus 1. We have e raised to j 2 omega naught t here. It contains 2 omega naught t, so it is corresponding to k equal to 2. So what we have here is a2. Similarly, e raised to minus j 2 omega naught t corresponds to k equals minus 2. So this is a minus 2. I have listed all the coefficients over here. We can further simplify a2 and a minus 2 because what we have here is e raised to j pi by 4. According to Euler's formula, e raised to j pi by 4 is cos pi by 4 plus j sine pi by 4. Cos pi by 4 is 1 by root 2 plus j sine pi by 4 is also 1 by root 2. So a2 becomes 1 by 2 times this, that is 1 by 2 root 2 multiplied by 1 plus j. The same way we have e raised to minus j pi by 4. So according to Euler's formula, that will be cos pi by 4 minus j sine pi by 4. Cos pi by 4 is 1 by root 2 minus j sine pi by 4 is 1 by root 2. What we have here is 1 by 2 times this. So it is equal to 1 by 2 root 2 multiplied by 1 minus j. So ak is only defined for k being 0, 1, minus 1, 2 and minus 2. For any other value of k, the coefficient is 0. Those harmonics are not available in our function. So we can write ak is equal to 0 for all k whose magnitude is greater than 2, which means k greater than 2 or k less than minus 2. Let us now solve another problem. We have to write the Fourier series representation of the wave that is given in the figure over here. In one period, it is defined as this. X of t is 1 for mod t being less than t1 and it is 0 for mod t being between t1 and t by 2. That is, if we take this time period, you can see when t is between minus t1 and t1, it is 1. Between minus t by 2 and minus t1, it is 0. Between t1 and t by 2 also, it is 0. And it repeats at every multiple of t. So first observation we can make is that x of t is periodic with a time period t. To find the coefficients, we can use the expression ak is equal to 1 by t integral over one time period x of t e raised to minus j k omega naught t dt. So first of all, for k equal to 0, we get a0 and it will be 1 by t integral over one time period. So let's take it from minus t by 2 to plus t by 2. But if you look at the signal, you can see that in between minus t by 2 and t by 2, we only have value between minus t and t1. So we don't really have to integrate it from minus t by 2 to t by 2. We can just integrate it from minus t1 to t1 because here it is 0 anyways. So let us change the limits of integration. It is from minus t1 to t1 now. Now from minus t1 to t1, value of x of t is 1. So we have 1 into e raised to minus j k omega naught t. When k is equal to 0, it becomes e raised to 0, which is 1. So all we have to integrate is 1 dt. And 1 dt is t. So 1 by t giving the limits minus t1 to t1. So this is t1 minus t1 divided by t, that is 2t1 by t. The DC component in the Fourier representation is 2t1 by t. Now we need to find an expression for ak when k is not equal to 0. So for k not equal to 0, ak will be 1 by t. We can again integrate from minus t1 to t1. X of t has value 1 between minus t1 and t1. E raised to minus j k omega naught t dt. Integration of exponential function is easy. We know integral e raised to kt is just 1 by k e raised to kt. Using that, this becomes 1 by t, 1 by minus j k omega naught, which is the coefficient of t over here, e raised to minus j k omega naught t. The limits are minus t1 to t1. Giving the limits, we get minus 1 by j k omega naught t e raised to minus j k omega naught t1 minus e raised to j k omega naught t1, because this minus and this minus gets cancelled and we get plus here. Let's bring the negative into the bracket. So this becomes e raised to j k omega naught t1 minus e raised to minus j k omega naught t1. Now this is familiar to us. If you divide this with 2j, then you will get sine of k omega naught t1. To do that, let us divide this with 2 and multiply it with 2. We have j over here. Let's take it and put it over here. Now this whole thing simply becomes sine of k omega naught t1. So we get ak is equal to 2 divided by k omega naught t multiplied by sine of k omega naught t1. Over here in the denominator we have omega naught multiplied by t, but omega naught is 2 pi by t. So taking t to the other side, omega naught into t is 2 pi. So we can remove omega naught t and put 2 pi there. But then we can cancel 2 from here and from here. So we get 1 by k pi sine of k omega naught t1, or we can write sine k omega naught t1 divided by k pi. So we have found all the coefficients. For k equal to 0, we got a0 is just 2t1 by t. For any other value of k, we get ak is sine of k omega naught t1 divided by k pi. Writing the Fourier representation, for k equal to 0, in the middle we will have 2t1 divided by t. Plus for k equal to 1, we will have sine of 1 omega naught t1 divided by 1 pi. Plus etc. we'll have infinite terms. On the other side, at k equal to minus 1, we get sine of minus omega naught t1 divided by minus pi. On that side also we'll have infinite terms. So like this, we can represent the signal given in the question as a Fourier series. The next concept we have to learn is very important. It is convergence of Fourier series. Before we figure out what is meant by the word convergence, there is some other concept that we have to get familiar with. For that, let us assume that we are representing a periodic signal using finite harmonics rather than infinite harmonics. That is, earlier we were taking k equals minus infinity to infinity. We had infinite components in our orthogonal set. But consider that we only have finite components in our orthogonal set. We have to take k equals minus n to n only. There are 2n plus 1 components in that case. So if we take the summation, it won't be exactly equal to x of t. There will be some error there because we are not taking infinite components. So we won't call it x of t. We call it xn of t. Xn of t will be an approximation for x of t. In such a case, we can define something called En of t. En of t is the approximation error. Approximation error is nothing. It is the difference between the approximation that we have made over here and the original signal x of t. So En of t, the error is equal to original signal x of t minus the approximation we got xn of t. That is x of t minus summation from k equals minus n to n a k e raised to j k omega naught t. We have previously defined the energy of a signal x of t as integral over a time period magnitude of x of t whole square dt. So over here we can write the energy of the error. Let's call it capital En. This will be equal to integral over a time period of magnitude of En of t square dt. Now what happens if I keep increasing the number n? Obviously, when n tends to be infinity, xn of t becomes exactly equal to x of t, so error will be 0. So we can say as we keep increasing the number of components in the orthogonal set, the approximation keeps getting closer and closer to the original signal. So we can write as n tends to be infinity, En tends to be 0. Notice carefully that I wrote capital En, that is, energy of the error tends to be 0, not small en of t, which is the error is equal to 0. That is because there could be error, but the energy of the error will become 0. What this means to us is that practically we can say xn of t will be equal to x of t. Mathematically, they may not be that much equal, but practically they will be. What it means is that assume you have an LTI system, you're giving a signal x of t to it, you're trying to do the math, do some calculations. You can actually take the approximate representation xn of t to do the math and find the output as long as the energy of the error is 0. For the LTI system, there won't be any difference between them as long as the energy of the error is 0. Even though there is error, if the energy of error is 0, then the two signals are practically the same. That is, if En is equal to 0, Fourier series representation can be taken practically equal to x of t. Now, there are some cases where the Fourier series representation of some periodic functions do not work. One of them is this. For some periodic functions, when we take the coefficient for the kth component ak as 1 by t integral over one time period of x of t e raised to minus j k omega naught t, it may have infinite value. Because when we are finding this integral, we are assuming we're going to get a constant, a finite value. But sometimes for some signals, we might get infinite value. We say it is diverging, not converging. Another such case is that sometimes even if all the coefficients are finite, when put into the synthesis equation, it may not converge to the original signal. What it means is that assume we have a function, we found the values of ak for it using our equation, and now we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to find out x of t back by using the expression of ak, because we know x of t is given as summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity ak e raised to j k omega naught t. We found ak, we put it over here, we're expecting we'll get x of t. But for some signals, when you do that, you may not be getting the original signal back. So that is another situation where the Fourier series is not converging. Now that you understand what is convergence of Fourier series, let us learn three conditions which might guarantee you that the Fourier series of this particular function will converge. There are three conditions and they are called Dirichlet conditions after the mathematician who formulated them. According to the first condition, x of t must be absolutely integrable over one period. That is, integration over one period of magnitude of x of t dt should be less than infinity, which means it should be finite, which means it is absolutely integrable. In that case, the Fourier series of x of t will converge. If you try to bring back x of t from the Fourier series representation, it will converge to the original function x of t. Let us see how we can explain this. We know the coefficient for kth component ak is given by 1 by t integral over one time period x of t e raised to minus j k omega naught t dt. Let us say we're taking magnitudes on both sides. Then the equality sign will become less than or equal to. We get magnitude of ak will be less than or equal to 1 by t integral over one time period of magnitude of x of t e raised to minus j k omega naught t dt. This can be written as magnitude of x of t multiplied by magnitude of e raised to minus j k omega naught t. But what is the magnitude of e raised to minus j k omega naught t? Let's consider a random e raised to j omega t. This can be written according to Euler's formula as cos omega t plus j sin omega t. What will be the magnitude? It will be root of cos square omega t plus sin square omega t. That is root of 1 or 1. So magnitude of any e raised to j omega t is 1. So magnitude of e raised to minus j k omega naught t will also be equal to 1. So we can write magnitude of ak will be less than or equal to 1 by t integral over one time period of magnitude of x of t dt. Now if this is finite, then this will also be finite. So to get finite coefficients for all values of k, we can write the condition is that this integral should be finite, or integral over a time period of magnitude of x of t dt should be less than infinity or finite. Let us now see an example of a signal that violates this condition. We have a periodic signal that is defined over one time period as this. X of t is 1 by t, where t is between 0 and 1. Graphically, it will look like this. Between 0 and 1, you can see we have 1 by t. Between 1 to 2, it is repeating again. Between minus 1 and 0, it is repeating again. So this is a periodic signal that is repeating from minus infinity to infinity. Let us check if this is converging or not using the condition number 1. So we are going to calculate integral over one time period of magnitude of x of t dt over here and check if it is finite or not. So here we get integral over one time period is from 0 to 1 mod x of t is 1 by t, so 1 by t dt. Integral 1 by t is log t, so we have log t limits from 0 to 1. Now this is log 1 minus log 0. Log 1 is finite, it is 0, minus log 0 is infinite. Since this is not a finite value, the coefficient for our kth component signal ak will also not be a finite value, it will be infinite. So we can say it is not going to converge to a finite value. Instead, it diverges. The second condition we have to learn is this. In any finite interval of time, x of t is bounded. Or in other words, there are no more than finite number of maxima and minima during any single period of the signal. For example, let us say you take a sine function like this. If you take one single period, you can see there is one maxima, one minima, a finite number of maxima and minima. And we know that a sine function has Fourier series that converges back to the original sine function. So according to this condition, if there are infinite number of maxima and minima in one time period itself, then its Fourier series might not converge. We can explain it like this. This condition ensures that the function does not oscillate infinitely within any period. Because if it is highly oscillatory, that could prevent the Fourier series from converging to the original function. You will understand this better when we see an example that does not obey this condition. We have x of t is equal to sine of 2 pi by t for t being between 0 and 1. Plotting on a graph, it looks like this. We have sine 2 pi by t between 0 and 1, and it keeps repeating between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and on the other side between 0 and minus 1, like that. Now, if we take a closer look over here, it might feel like we can count the maxima and minima in one time period. For example, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minimas are there. But that is because of my difficulty to actually portray how this graph looks like. In fact, over here, it kind of looks like this. There are infinite maximas and minimas. If you want to see how this graph actually looks like, do something. Go to Google, search for graphing calculator, take the first one you get, try to plot sine of 2 pi by t, and then you'll be able to see that it is not possible for you to calculate how many maximas and minimas are there. So we can say this function obviously do not satisfy the condition number 2, that there are no more than finite number of maxima and minima during any single period of the signal. But interestingly, this function actually meets condition 1. If you integrate for one time period mod of x of t dt, it will be less than 1, which is a finite value. But still, since it does not satisfy the second condition, its Fourier series is not going to converge. Now, the third condition says that in any finite interval of time, there should be only a finite number of discontinuities, and each discontinuity must be finite. A discontinuity in a signal is a sudden change in its value. For example, let us say we have a wave that looks like this. There is a discontinuity over here, and over here. Because at all these points, there is a sudden jump from one value to another value. According to condition 3, the signal can have discontinuities, but the number of discontinuities should be finite, and the discontinuity should also be finite. It should not go to infinity in one jump. Let's take an example of a signal who violates this condition. We have a signal shown over here on the graph. It is called x of t. X of t is periodic with time period 8 seconds. Now, it is composed of infinite number of sections, each of which is half the height and half the width of the previous section. To understand this, let's take a closer look. Let us take from 0 to 8, that is one time period. So, first we have this much width, this much height. The next section has half of the width and half of the height. The next one will have 1/4 of the width and 1/4 of the height. So it goes on like that. There will be infinite discontinuities even in one time period. So the Fourier series of this function is not going to converge back into its original function x of t. But the good news is that signals that do not satisfy Dirichlet conditions do not typically arise in practical contexts. So, as engineers, the signals that you will have to encounter in the real world almost always have Fourier series that converges back to their original functions. Let us now make some conclusions based on everything that we learned today. For a periodic signal with no discontinuity, the Fourier series representation will converge and it will be equal to the original signal at every time t. So we can very comfortably work with a periodic signal if there are no discontinuity. But for periodic signals with finite discontinuities in each period, mind it, the number of discontinuities is finite. In that case, the Fourier series representation equals the signal everywhere except at the discontinuities. What happens at the discontinuity is this: it will converge to the average value of the signal on either side. For example, if you have a square wave that looks like this, the Fourier series will have a problem at these 2 points. So, at these 2 points, it will approximate a value that is equal to the average of the value over here and over here. So if you take the difference between the Fourier series representation you got and the original signal, there will be something, and that is what we called error. But we also learned that if the error does not have any energy, then you can consider the two signals to be equivalent in a practical situation. That is, since the difference between the signal and its Fourier series representation, which is the error, has no energy, then the two can be considered the same for practical purposes. Under the convolution operation, the two signals will behave identically. Why does it matter? Because in our previous videos, we have learned about LTI systems. If there is a system with impulse response h of t and you're giving an input x of t, the y of t, the output is given as the convolution of x of t and h of t. So, as long as the original function x of t and its Fourier representation behave identically under convolution, it doesn't matter which one you're using to do the math, they are identical in the analysis of LTI systems. Now, if the periodic signal has infinite discontinuities in one period, then it will be difficult for us to work with its Fourier series. But luckily for us, none of the signals that we have to work with actually have infinite discontinuities. Now we're going to study about an experiment that was done by a scientist called Albert Michelson. Albert Michelson created a machine. What the machine did is simply this: if you gave a periodic function x of t as an input to it, it would give the finite Fourier series approximation of it as an output. That is, x of t as an input would give x n of t as an output. The important part is this is a finite approximation x n of t. The number of signals in the orthogonal set is limited. He used his machine to find the finite Fourier series representation of so many signals, and once he was trying to find the finite Fourier series approximation of a square wave. In this machine, he could actually change the value of n. he could take from n equal to 1 up to n equal to 80. This was the output he got when he took n equal to 1. That is, his orthogonal set only had one component in it. Obviously, it is not very helpful, so the output looked like this. Over here, I have also given the original signal for comparison. You can see they are very much different from each other, so the error will be really high. Then he increased n to 3. He got a better representation that looked like this. Then he made n equals 7. You can see he got a much better representation that looked like this. Then he made n equal to 19, and after that n equals 79. What we can observe here is that the approximate representation is actually getting closer and closer to its original function. Everything is great, but Michelson actually found something very strange in this. What he observed was this: the discontinuity is exhibiting ripples, and the peak amplitude of these ripples does not decrease with increasing n. Let's take a closer look at our graphs to understand this better. In the first graph, you can see the ripple over here, and its peak value is this much. In the second case, you can see ripples here and here, but then the peak is still the same. In the third case, you can see the peak value the ripples are getting is still the same. Here also the peak has the same magnitude. Here also the peak has the same magnitude. The peak is not decreasing as we are increasing n. They are up to this height in all these cases. Michelson did not understand why this was happening, so he decided to take help from another mathematician. His name was Josiah Gibbs. Gibbs studied about this and concluded that no matter how many terms is included in the partial sum, the overshoot does not disappear. When he said partial sum, he meant the finite Fourier series approximation. Because for a proper Fourier series representation, you have to take summation from k equal to minus infinity to infinity. If you are only taking summation from k equals minus n to n, that is only a finite number, then it is not the complete sum, it is partial sum. And by overshoot, he means the peak that you're getting at the ripples. So, according to him, no matter how many terms are included in the partial sum, the overshoot does not disappear. It is still there even when n is equal to 79. He actually found out the value for it. It remains 9% of the jump of the discontinuity. For example, if the jump is from 0 to 1, then the overshoot that you get over here will be 9% of 1, that is 0.09. He said that as n increases, the overshoot becomes more localized towards the discontinuity. That we can observe in these graphs very clearly. When n is equal to 1, you can see the overshoot is throughout this much of the time. When n equal to 3, it is only this much, and it is getting closer to the discontinuity. When n is equal to 7, as you can see, it is getting even closer to the discontinuity and it is getting more localized. N equal to 19, the overshoot is like this. N equal to 79, you can see it is way more localized now. Since Josiah Gibbs explained this phenomenon, it is called Gibbs phenomenon. Let us end this video by asking the most important question. Why do we need to represent a periodic signal using Fourier series? How does it help us? To understand that, let us learn the application of continuous time Fourier series in analyzing LTI systems. Before we get into that, there are certain things that we need to understand about LTI systems. It is written over here that the response of an LTI system to a complex exponential input is the same complex exponential with only a change in amplitude. For example, let us take our input to be a simple complex exponential, that is e raised to j omega t. For simplicity, let us call it e raised to st, where s will be equal to j omega. According to this, if you give e raised to st as an input to an LTI system, the output will be e raised to st itself, but with a scaled amplitude. So let us say the amplitude is h of s. Here, the amplitude h of s will be a function of s. And s here is j omega. Let me prove this to you. For that, first consider an LTI system whose impulse response is h of t. Now, let us take the input x of t to be e raised to st. What I have to prove is that the output is going to be in this form. We know how to find out the output of an LTI system when the input and the impulse response is given. We just have to take the convolution of both of them. So the output y of t will be integral from minus infinity to infinity x of tau h of t minus tau d tau. This is the convolution of x of t and h of t. But we know in LTI systems, the order of convolution does not matter. So we can take this as integral from minus infinity to infinity h of tau x of t minus tau d tau. In this case, x of t is e raised to st. So x of t minus tau will be e raised to s into t minus tau. So this is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity h of tau e raised to s into t minus tau d tau. Here we have e raised to s into t minus tau. We can write it like this, e raised to st multiplied by e raised to minus s tau. Doing that, we get y of t is equal to integral from minus infinity to infinity h of tau e raised to st into e raised to minus s tau d tau. Here the variable with respect to which we are doing the integration is tau. T is considered a constant. So e raised to st can be taken out of the integration. This becomes e raised to st multiplied by integral from minus infinity to infinity h of tau e raised to minus s tau d tau. Isn't this of the form h of s multiplied by e raised to st? We have e raised to st, and what we have over here is a function of s. When you calculate this integral, you will get a complex constant and we will call it h of s. So we can write y of t is equal to h of s multiplied by e raised to st, where h of s is this integral, that is integral from minus infinity to infinity h of tau e raised to minus s tau d tau. So we just proved that if you give e raised to st as an input to an LTI system, the output will be of the form h of s multiplied by e raised to st. That is, the output is still e raised to st with a different amplitude. Now, such a signal for which the system's output is nothing but a constant multiplied by the input is called the eigenfunction of the system. So over here we can say e raised to st will be an eigenfunction of LTI systems. Also, the amplitude scaling factor is called eigenvalue. So over here, h of s will be the eigenvalue and e raised to st will be the eigenfunction of LTI systems. What we can conclude here is that complex exponentials are eigenfunctions of LTI systems. If they are given as an input to an LTI system, the output will be just a constant multiplied by the input itself. Now, what does this have to do with Fourier series representation of a signal? To understand that, let us take an example. Assume we have a periodic signal x of t and we have written down its Fourier series representation, and we found out that it is a linear combination of three complex exponentials. That is, x of t looked like this: a1 e raised to s1t plus a2 e raised to s2t plus a3 e raised to s3t. We have taken earlier that s is equal to j omega. So over here, s1, s2 and s3 will be some multiples of j omega. So technically we are taking e raised to j k omega. This is nothing new. According to the eigenfunction property that we just learned, the first term a1 e raised to s1t will give an output that is equal to a1 multiplied by e raised to s1t gives h of s1 multiplied by e raised to s1t itself. Similarly, a2 e raised to s2t gives a2 multiplied by response of e raised to s2t, h of s2 e raised to s2t. Then a3 e raised to s3t will give us a3 h of s3 e raised to s3t. Now we know that LTI systems obey superposition property, so the total output is only going to be the sum of individual responses. So we can write y of t is equal to a1 h of s1 e raised to s1t plus a2 h of s2 e raised to s2t plus a3 h of s3 e raised to s3t. To find any of these h of s, that is h of sk, where k can take values 1, 2 or 3, all we have to do is integral from minus infinity to infinity of h of tau e raised to minus s tau d tau. It only depends on h of tau, which is the impulse response of our system. So we can easily find out h of s for all of these terms. So technically, by writing a periodic signal as a linear combination of complex exponentials, finding output of an LTI system mathematically becomes way more simple. The conclusion we can make over here is this: representation of signals as a linear combination of complex exponential lead to a very convenient expression for the output response of the LTI system. That is, if you can write x of t like this, summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity, ak e raised to skt. I'll say that again, s is j omega, so sk will be j k omega. So this is the same equation that we used earlier, e raised to j k omega. Nothing new here. So if you can write x of t in this form, then y of t will simply be summation from k equals minus infinity to infinity. Ak will still be there, it is a constant. For e raised to skt, the response will be h of sk multiplied by e raised to skt itself. So it makes the mathematics of finding output of an LTI system easier. Let us now solve a problem. It is given that input and output of an LTI system are related as this: y of t is x of t minus 3. We have to take x of t to be e raised to j2t. Then we have to find y of t and verify the eigenvalue. So first, let us try to directly find the output of this system, because they have already given y of t is x of t minus 3. So if x of t is e raised to j2t, then y of t is simply going to be e raised to j2 into t minus 3. We can split this and write e raised to j2t multiplied by e raised to minus j2 into 3, 6. Or e raised to minus j6 multiplied by e raised to j2t. But e raised to j2t is our original input. And what we have here is a complex constant. We have already given a name to the complex constant that will come as the amplitude. It is nothing but our h of s. But over here, our input is e raised to j2t. If I write this is equal to e raised to s, then s here is j2. So h of s will be equal to h of j2. You can clearly see this is of the form that we were expecting. Some complex constant multiplied by the input itself. But what we have to verify here is the eigenvalue. Eigenvalue is h of s or h of j2, which is e raised to minus j6. To do the verification, let us try to find out h of s using the equation that we just learned. But before that, we have to define the impulse response of this LTI system. It is given response to x of t is x of t minus 3. So response to delta of t will be delta of t minus 3, and this is our impulse response. So h of t is delta of t minus 3. Now we learned h of s is given by the equation integral from minus infinity to infinity h of tau e raised to minus s tau d tau. We have to verify is this integration will give us e raised to minus j6 or not. Now this becomes integral from minus infinity to infinity. H of t is delta of t minus 3. H of tau is delta of tau minus 3. E raised to minus s tau d tau. Now this is actually the sampling property of impulse function. You are multiplying e raised to minus s tau with delta of tau minus 3. Delta of tau minus 3 only exists where tau is equal to 3. So if you are multiplying them, you will get the value of e raised to minus s tau where tau is equal to 3. So this simply gives you e raised to minus s into 3. But we found here s in this question is j2. So this is e raised to minus j2 multiplied by 3 or e raised to minus j6, which is exactly the h of s we got over here. The verification is done. So that's all about it for today. See you in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe.